Hello everybody, this is Alan Underwood with codingblocks.net, and in today's video what I want to do is I want to show how to set up a Docker container to run Blazor, which is the new Microsoft WebAssembly framework for writing applications in C# and Razor syntax, and then having that automatically turn into like a SPA on the web. So with that, I'm actually going to take this approach in the video in that I want to show you real quick how to just go through. If you follow these steps, you'll have a container set up, and actually we'll probably publish this under the coding blocks. And then that way, if you just want to run it and you don't want to have to deal with all this, then fine. Hopefully this will be useful for you. If you like this video, please do leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and have fun doing this coding and playing with Docker. All right, before we dive straight into getting this stuff set up, I at least want you to know how you can go about finding some of the pieces to make this work, because I know at least when I was trying to get all this set up, I had about 100 tabs open, and it was kind of hard to, you're putting a bunch of pieces together and it's easy to get lost. So the first thing, we know that we want to do a Blazor container. So let's go look and see what it's going to take to get Blazor set up. So let's just search for ASP.NET Blazor. The first thing that comes up for me at least is GitHub, and that's good because that's what I want to see. And then down here, there's a lot of useful information on this page, but really the one that we want to see is this getting started guide. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up in a new tab. And here's the key information that we need to know here. If you've installed .NET Core 2.1.preview2 previously, this is what you actually need right here. So if you look at this, it's 2.1.300-preview2-0085333, right? Okay, interesting. So now we know that we need a .NET Core based container. So I just know that the Microsoft stuff is under at /r/Microsoft, and then the .NET Core stuff is right here on the main page. So let's click into that, and usually at the top of the Microsoft ones you'll have your stable releases, so like 2.0, right? Well, we want the preview. And just as a note, what we're going to be doing here, this setup guide, they talk about how to get started here, and they say install the latest preview of Visual Studio 2017. And typically I would do that, but I want this tutorial to be for people that are on Macs, because that's initially how I got this set up and running, is I did all this on a Mac. So I don't want to alienate people that are on different OSs, so Mac or Linux or anything else like that. So we're not going to do the Visual Studio 2017 installing this to get this up and running. I want to show you how you can do it just straight up with command line and Docker and be off to the races without too much pain. So that said, I'm going to use a Linux container because I do want to keep the cross-platform thing in mind. So I'm going to be looking at the Linux containers. Right now I have my Docker set up to run in Linux container mode. In theory, or not even in theory, in practice, I've messed with this. I could actually run this in Windows container mode and just turn on the experimental bits, but I want to keep this as stable as possible. So for the sake of this, we're going to go here. So these are the more stable releases. We want the preview stuff. We want the things that could potentially break. And just because it's very common, I'm going to work with this stretch one. For anybody who knows, that is Debian 9. So I'm going to pop this Docker file open into a new window here, and let's go take a look at what it's building off of. So if you look right here, it's basically saying it is, first off, here's the .NET Core thing. It's going to pull the stretch SCM, and then the environment that it has looks 2.1.300-preview2, but then if you look here, there's a slight difference. It's 0.08530. What it said we needed was 533. So maybe it's not a big difference, but it's probably just not worth the headache that you would eventually run into with just that one thing that was missing. So we know that we're going to need a newer version than what they have that ships right now. So not a big deal, because if you look down here, this is an environment variable that they're setting up here, and it gets subbed in down here. So if you swap this thing out, then it should just go download the proper version of this and install it for you, which is pretty cool, right? So here's the only thing though. If you look at this, they have this checksum, SHA-512 checksum, that is going to make sure that the checksum of this particular version that's downloaded matches this. Well, we can't just leave this here if we're going to change the version up here because it'll fail. I mean, you could comment this line out, but then you risk getting a file that's not necessarily what Microsoft provided. So we really want to go get the correct checksum for this. This actually took me longer than what I'd like to admit. But if you look for .NET Core Preview 2.3.1, .NET Core 2.1.300 download. If you do that, this will take you to the Microsoft download page. And on this page, down here at the very bottom, they have these checksums. And this is really what you want to be looking for here. So this is 2.1.300/preview1. We actually want preview 2. So we probably need to go back. Really? Oh, that's ridiculous. Let's look, maybe we can just change it up here. Let's do preview 2. There we go. All right, so preview 2 download. We'll do the checksums. And now we should see, there we go, 008533. All right, and we're going to want the stretch. Actually, this one was just Linux is what they had in here. If I remember correctly. I can't even remember where I saw it. Yeah, Linux-x64, right? So we need Linux-x64. So it's this one right here. And if you look at these, they put the checksum above the file. So let's go ahead and grab this. We're going to need that here in a minute. All right, so that said, that's pretty much everything. So what I'm going to do here, because really it's just a Docker file, is I want to set this thing up on mine. So I'm going to grab all the contents of this thing right here. So I went to the raw view and I'm just going to copy this. So again, I clicked raw, I'm going to copy this whole thing. And now what I'm going to do is I really just want to create a folder on my computer for this. So let's go to documents. I think I have dev. All right, cool. So let's do that. Let's create a folder in here. And we're going to call this Docker. And in here, I'm going to call this Blazor because I'm just going to create a Blazor one. All right. Now, in here, I'm going to create a new file. And I'm going to call it dockerfile. We're going to get rid of the extension. All right. And now I'm going to open this thing with Visual Studio Code because I really like Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to paste that in. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to a 3 there on the end, just like we saw before. We're going to go back over here now and grab this. And let's put this into the checksum. Get rid of those extra spaces because that would likely fail it. And this would get us pretty far. Now, if I go into this particular container or into this folder and I do a Docker build, this should at least get me the environment set up that I need, which is excellent. Okay, so now that we've got this file at least set up so that it'll pull in the proper version of the .NET Core framework for us, what we need at this point, though, is there's some extra little pieces through Pain that I've found that we actually need. So let's go back over here and let's look at this getting started with Blazor. Okay, so if we scroll down, you'll see they've got some things if you're using Visual Studio, but there's this little blurb right here that's awesome. So the important part is this one. So this .NET New -I and then Microsoft ASP.NET Core and templates and all that, that's what's actually going to pull down the dependencies needed to be able to run this thing. The rest of this actually creates a .NET Blazor app, and then this is just going into it and then running it. Okay, so we'll do that in a minute. But for right now, we need this top section, and we want this to be a part of our container. We don't want to have to deal with this thing every single time. So let's go ahead and put another line right after all this, drop it down. And now when this thing starts up, that should go ahead and get this particular container set up to where it's ready to run with Blazor right out of the bat. Now, a few things to note down here that are really good to look at is you'll see that this thing right here is automatically going to set up the application to run on port 80. We'll need to expose that when we run our container. There's an environment variable set up to tell it that .NET is running in a container. This is important as well. This polling file watcher, if you want to be able to change files on your system and have your application update as you go without going back and forth and doing a .NET run or a .NET build, that will be greatly helpful. And we can leave all the rest of this alone, but it's nice to at least know what this stuff is doing. All right, so with that, I think it's time to go ahead and let's get this container set up. So let's go over here, let's go to documents, and then I had it in dev, and then we had Docker, and then we have Blazor, right? All right, so I only have the Docker file in here. Now, really what we want to do is we should just be able to go ahead and build this thing. And I'm going to build it and tag it as Blazor with the latest. So let's go ahead and do Docker build -t. So I'm going to tag it. I'm just going to name this image Blazor. And we'll put latest in here for right now. Really, probably what I should do, though, is I should probably do something like Blazor 2.1.300.008.533, something like that, right? That's probably the more appropriate way to do it. And I think you can even do this. And then that way, when we come back later, it's good to go. So let's do this thing. We're going to let it run. It's going to download all the layers and dependencies that it needs based off what it found in that Docker file. So that's actually where it went out and got that version of the .NET framework. And yep, everything went well there. So the checksum actually happened properly. That's all good news because it would have actually blown up there and quit if that checksum hadn't checked out properly. So that's beautiful. This is where it's going to go ahead and install all the .NET pieces. You'll see that it does like a restore of the packages. And then right after that, it's going to call the stuff for what we did. And check it out. This is beautiful. We'll have blah, blah. That's all good. And you'll see here that it successfully tagged the Blazor with that particular preview release and latest. So let's go ahead and do a Docker images. And we should see in here now that we have two. These are essentially the same thing right here. And it's not tiny, by the way, especially not when you're doing it. When you pull down the .NET Core and all that kind of stuff, it gets a little bit big. And part of that too is probably I didn't do any cleanup after it pulled in some of its dependencies. But those are the two that we have now. So that's really cool. So technically at this point, we can start this container and we can get rocking with Blazor. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do a Docker run dash. We're going to go ahead and do it interactive. I'm going to name it just so you know it's easy to kill in a second. So we'll call it Blazor test. What else we need on here? We need to expose the port. So we're going to do port 8000 on ours, maps to port 80 in the container. And then, yeah, I don't think there's really, oh, we probably want to do a volume. So we're going to want to map a volume here. And in this case, let me set up something. So let's just create a new folder in here called Blazor inside my just regular dev thing. And so we will say C:\users Allen, documents, dev, Blazor, right? So we're going to map that, and we're going to put that in the app folder inside the container. All right, and then I believe that should be it. So we've got run interactive, name, ports, those are all good. So now let's just do Blazor latest. All right, and if I did, yes, I do want to share it. Apparently I haven't worked with this in a while. Okay, so I'm in there. So if we look here and we go to cd app, oh, that's right, I forgot to set the working directory. So let's go ahead and kill this. I'll show you typically what you want to do. Exit. All right, and here's another trick. So this is probably worth having not done properly. So if I do a docker ps-a, you'll see that I have this container sitting there, right? I don't. Oh, I have a few of them. I haven't done anything in a while. So let's go ahead and kill both of these things. So I'm going to say docker rm 74 and a9. All right. I really wish that this wasn't cutting off the bottom. There we go. Let's try this again. Docker ps. Nothing's there. Let's do a ps-a. It's all gone. All right, cool. So really what we want to do now is let's go back to that command that I did a minute ago. So there's a couple things. Let's put rm in there. That basically means go ahead and remove the container. When it's done, just get rid of it, right? Let's keep things clean. And then the other thing that we want to do is we want to set the working directory to /app. And then that way, when we get into the container, when this thing starts up, we'll be in the app directory now and we're not at the root. So this is just a way to be able to tell it where it's going to launch. So this is all really cool. In theory now, we have a container that is ready to run a Blazor app. And we can test that theory out a little bit by doing this. So let's just go ahead and create something. Now, this command right here is going to create a new Blazor application, and it tells it to output it into a new folder called Blazor App 1. Well, I don't necessarily want to do that. What we're going to do is this. Copy that. So .NET new Blazor out, and I'm going to tell it put it in this directory right here. There's no reason for me to put it into another subdirectory. All right, so that looks really cool, right? Let's see, did we get anything in our Blazor folder? Look at that. Now we have a program in there. So this is really cool. But there's a few things that I found along the way that can be really painful if you're not aware of them. So the very first thing that you're going to want to do is in this properties, there's this launch.settings. So let's open this up with code. All right. This right here will cause major pain because if you remember correctly, in the Docker file that we looked at up here, this thing says that it's going to use port 80. Well, if you have this in here, it really messes things up. So let's go ahead and kill this line. We don't need that. All right, and here's another one. Because we're inside a Docker container, this is not going to launch a browser. So let's go ahead and kill that thing off. So now we seem to be in a pretty good spot. Let's go ahead and see what happens. So one thing, let's go ahead and open up another tab and let's do a docker ps-a and check it out. You can look here, our local 8000 is going to point to 80, which is good. So let's just see if this thing will launch now. So let's say .NET run. And if everything went smoothly, and hopefully it did because I'm trying to record this in one shot, then we should see that this is going to start up the application and it'll be ready on port 80. So that's looking kind of good. Let's see what we have. Now remember, we mapped port 8000 to it. Check that out. Look at that, guys. We have a Blazor application running inside a Docker container. That's really cool. And you'll see here, when you make requests, you know that this is actually happening because as you make requests, it's logging out some information here. So this last one was 5.9141. Let's go to another page. And well, that's the same one. Let's see. Let's do fetch data. Maybe that'll pull something else. Yeah, there we go. So that updated, right? So really cool stuff. Now, here's the thing that we want to really see, and this is where we'll have to do a little bit of extra work. So let's go here in Visual Studio Code, which runs on Mac and Linux as well. So let's take a look at this, and let's go to my documents, and let's go to dev, Blazor, and let's just open this entire folder, right? Did I do the wrong thing? Let's do file, open folder. That's what I meant to do. Dev, Blazor, boom. All right. So there is one other thing that I found out that we have to do here, that if you don't, then for whatever reason, then file changes won't get picked up. So first off, let's go back here and let's shut down this thing. So Control C this, and it shut it down, right? So there is the ability to do a watch on files when you are changing things in the system. So we can do .NET, and we did run a second ago, but you can say watch and then run. Okay, and you'll see that this polling file watcher is enabled, but you'll also see that this thing just doesn't work out of the box, which is really frustrating because you know, it seems like it should. So let's go to pages. Actually, was it? Yeah, it was in pages. So let's go to index.html. So we have hello world. Let's say hello beautiful world, right? Because that's what we got. So let's go home. And it's not picking it up, right? That's a little frustrating. So let's kill this thing. It seems like it should have worked because it said it was watching the file system, but it obviously wasn't. So really what I found is, and this is only through a decent amount of trial and error, is for some weird reason with this one, if you ran a regular ASP.NET Core app in here and you had the watch run on there, it does it just fine. So like if you were to download the sample apps, the MVC one, that works fine. There's no problems. But on this one, you need to open this thing up, and you need to add in a watch include equal, and then you're basically going to tell it which files you want to watch, right? So just for the time being, I'm going to show you doing it with the CSHTML files just to prove that it works, right? And I'll expand on this further as I go along, right? So that if I have CS files or anything like that, that those will also get picked up. But for the time being, let's just see if this works, because we tried it a second ago and this didn't do anything, right? So let's get rid of that again. And let's go back and let's do the .NET watch run. And here we'll see that the polling file watcher is enabled, just like it was last time, even though I feel like they lied to us. And let's refresh this. All right, this is in there, and we see that it spit out a bunch of logs. So now let's come in here and let's try beautiful world and check it out. Now it's actually seeing it. It killed it. It saw the file change. It started it back up. And now if I come back over here and refresh, hopefully this will say hello beautiful world. So there you go, right? This is now a container and a project that you've got up and running that you can literally just start creating some stuff, right? And this is not specific to Windows. I did this exact same process. I actually learned to do this process on the Mac because I wanted to force the pain. And yeah, man, this is pretty awesome. So hopefully with that, you are excited about this. I mean, if you haven't seen Blazor and you don't know what all the hoopla is, the thing is you get this whole SPA thing. This is all running, and there's no JavaScript framework here. There's no Angular. There's no React.js. There's none of that. This is basically like an MVC app that gets automatically turned into a SPA for you, and it doesn't expose the code. So let's check something out real quick. I mean, seeing as how we're in here, why not? So this is going to be interesting because I've got the screen resolution dropped down so that we can look at this stuff. But let's go to I thought I hit F12. Let's try that again. And let's undock this thing. And let's go to the network tab. All right, so check this out. Oh, and here's the cool part, right? Like it still uses things like Bootstrap. If you've ever used Bootstrap, you know this looks very much like it, right? But let's look at what comes down across the line here. Look at this. These are DLLs that are coming across here. And then there's the Blazor JS. That's the framework that it's using, right? But these are DLLs that are coming down through here. So that's really interesting. Your application has not been exposed through your JavaScript, which is kind of cool, right? I mean, the fact that here's your app right here, your app DLL. This is what your application is. That's really cool that now, you know, in the past, people could just basically hijack your JS, which I'm sure there's still some things that they can do. I haven't done a deep dive into this, but that's your application right there, guys. So that's pretty cool stuff. So at any rate, that is, if you haven't heard about all the coolness around here, that is what it is. You basically have CHTML, your Razor syntax files, and then you will have some C files somewhere. I found them at one point. Maybe it's just in the program.cs. I can't remember exactly. But yeah, for the most part, it's pretty nifty. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, comments, anything like that, please do leave them in the comments below. If you're on codingblocks.net, you know, obviously just leave some comments on there. If you're on YouTube, leave them there, and we will gladly answer as much of them as we can. And hopefully this gets you excited about a few things, right? Now you've got a Docker container that if you want to play around, you're not junking up your system with a bunch of preview builds of .NET Core or anything like that. It's all localized to this one container, right? When you're done with it, you shut it down, you exit this thing, and guess what? There's no processes running on your system. It's just there. And because we ran this with a -rm, you don't even have a container floating around anymore. You basically have your images that are sitting there that if you ever want to start them up, they're there. They have the .NET framework internal to it. They've got all the .NET CLI built in there. And now, because we set up that Docker file using, get out of the way, using wherever it went, I think it's gone. I opened up the folder on top of it. But because we told it to do that Blazor install of the package there, it is all there. So you're off to the races. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Like I said, any questions or anything, please leave them below. I know I'm rambling on now, but it's exciting to be able to play with this stuff and to be able to spin up these environments as quick and easy as you can nowadays. So, you know, have fun and share your experiences. If you find anything cool with it, let us know and we can update this. So thanks and hope you enjoyed. Bye.